Hello gamers. So about an hour ago, Genshin dropped the Odette and Arlecchino banners. We knew Alyosha was going to be here, but we didn't fully know that Lynette or Sucrose was going to be here. So I thought we could do a quick banner review, and of course we can go over the weapons as well. I'll first quickly go over the 5 stars on the banner. I've recently made an Odette guide, and I also made an Arlecchino related video not too long ago as well. But Odette is looking very strong. She's, like I said in my guide video, I think she's looking like the quote-unquote Columbina of Snezhnaya. It looks like she's going to be sort of this very flexible sub-DPS that can kind of just slot into a lot of stellar teams. She's also the enabler of probably one of the best free-to-play teams that we've ever seen in the entire game, which is the Odette Mizuki Cryo Traveler team, and throwing in a Sucrose on that team as well. We're looking at a team where the only limited 5-star is Odette, and it's doing like upwards of 160, 170. I've seen some calcs go all the way up to 200,000 DPS for a team with only one limited 5-star on it. So pretty insane stuff. I feel like Odette is really going to be a very flexible, versatile unit for all of Snezhnaya. She's just going to slot into a lot of these teams. My only worry is that I feel like if they go the route of releasing more characters that are sort of equivalent to Lauma, right? If they release a Stellar Conduct dedicated support that just is, stronger than Odette, or they release a Stellar Swirl dedicated support that's also stronger than Odette, then maybe by the end of Snezhnaya, she might get phased out of some of these teams. That was my only concern. I think it's kind of unlikely though. I think it's more likely that they just release characters that sort of work around her instead of kicking her out of the teams. But Odette, if you're a free-to-play player, this is definitely a character you're probably looking for. I think she provides so much value at C0 that it's really worth looking into. And we can quickly talk about Arlecchino. I think it kind of goes without saying that being a relatively older DPS, she kind of gets outclassed in almost everything by Malwika, maybe just flat out everything. And I don't really think she's too extremely competitive unless you have some constellations or some sort of, like if you have C0R1 or C1 with Jadewing Spear, some combination of like a little bit of vertical investment on her. Luckily, her early vertical is ridiculously good. Her C1 is like, I think the best C1 in the entire game. It's an insane increase. And her R1 is really good if your next best option is like White Tassel or something. But if you have Primordial Jadewing Spear, you can use that too. It's gotten a little bit of a, revitalization, resurgence in relevance due to the Mona Hex team that she's a part of with like Sucrose or Fischl. That team is very good, but I think practically it is also a fragile team. And so if you're not used to playing Arlecchino like this, such a fragile team, like I've been playing Arlecchino this whole time, no shielder, no healer. I mean, she can't really use a healer, no shields or anything. I've just gotten good at, dodging enemy attacks. And if I get one shot, I reset, and I've just kind of accepted that. If you like to be a bit more practical, then I don't know if the Mona Hex teams are for you. Those teams are really fragile and need pretty good matchups. So I do think, though, that Arlecchino is extremely underrated, and I'm glad that the Mona Hex stuff is sort of bringing her relevance up again, because Malwika just really has completely overshadowed her. But that doesn't mean Arlecchino is bad. Like Arlecchino with some early vertical, she still performs insane in these melt teams, and of course these Mona Hex vape teams. She's not going to be better than Malwika, but I think to say that she's like bad is definitely an incorrect statement. She's still very good. And now we can talk about the 4 stars, starting with Lynette. Lynette is, I'd say, is actually pretty good if you're brand new to the game, because she can hold VV. She gives like attack percent buffs, which is nice. She can sort of be like a off-field elemental applicator, which is nice. I mean, a lot of other animos do that, but I think a lot of her kit was focused on kind of trying to make her like an animo sub DPS, and at C6 an on-field DPS. She suffers from being a 4-star and therefore has 4-star multipliers, so she just like isn't that strong. And also being an animo character, she can't take advantage of any multiplicative reactions, right? Like how Gaming can take advantage of Vaporize and Melt. A character like Lynette can't really take advantage of that in the same way. So she kind of just ends up being outclassed. In fact, Sucrose kind of just does what she does, but does it better. Like you could just put Sucrose on Thrilling Tales and VV, and she kind of just is better than Lynette. I mean, she probably does less damage than Lynette, but you know, if your goal is to just buff someone else on the team, then Sucrose just does it better. She has a taunt, which is kind of cool. That's like relatively unique, but taunts for the most part are kind of useless. Lynette felt a lot more useful back in Fontaine when she came out because she had like a skill that kind of made you run fast, which was nice for exploration. And of course she could interact with like the Fontaine light and dark mechanics, so you could use her for that. She's kind of heavily outclassed by other animo characters, and her damage is simply not that good. But like I said, early on, I wouldn't mind getting a Lynette. And then we have Sucrose, and Sucrose has become a lot more relevant thanks to the fact that a lot of the teams we need are based off of like reaction damage. She gives EM, and not only does she give EM, she gives EM to the whole team. And this is even better for these specific reactions because these specific reactions don't look at just the stats of one person in your team. They look at the stats of like everyone in your team. So this makes Sucrose just insanely overpowered in most of these reaction teams. She's still going to be good in the stellar teams. So if you don't have a copy of Sucrose, then getting one is good. However, I will say that I feel like after maybe C1, her constellations kind of don't matter anymore. C1 just gives you the extra skill charge, if I remember correctly, which is nice for like energy in some teams. It's nice just to be able to have multiple skills to use as well. Aside from that, her C4 is just like cooldown reduction, which I guess is okay. And her C6 is 20% elemental damage bonus to whatever element gets absorbed in her burst, which is not that great, all things considered. Like these days, a 20% elemental damage bonus is kind of a nothing burger damage buff, and elemental damage bonus in general is pretty weak in a lot of these like reaction teams that she's very relevant in. And the fact that you also need to be infusing the burst to get this damage bonus means you would have to build ER for it if you wanted to do it every rotation, and it's just not worth it. It is so much better just to stack as much EM as possible on Sucrose. So while I will say Sucrose is like a fantastic character here, she is basically a full complete unit at C0, and C1 helps, but like at C0 she gives you everything you need, and anything past that is just, you know, kind of does nothing in most of the teams that she's good in. And you can already get Sucrose for free at the Witch selector. Once you have access to that, you can pick Sucrose, Fischl, or Razor. Now, if you chose to pick like Fischl or something, then here's your chance to get Sucrose. Yeah, that's kind of my only issue, where it's like, yes, Sucrose is a fantastic character for teams that Odette is going to be in for sure, and also just fantastic in general for lunar reaction teams. But in those teams, she is basically full value at C0 already, so if you have a copy of her already, Constellation's not really needed, right? And now we have Alyosha, and the thing about Alyosha is he got kinda nerfed. It doesn't mean he's bad, but he used to give attack percent bonus and stellar conduct bonus to the entire team. Now it only applies to the on-fielder, which is a big hit, but that doesn't mean he's bad. Obviously, that's still really big value in teams where your on-fielder is doing the majority of the damage, like in Sandrone teams. The big issue is that he's a little bit of a C6 merchant, and that is because essentially at C0 he gives a 20% attack bonus buff to the on-fielder and a 20% stellar conduct bonus to the on-fielder, Once you have C6, it allows his buff to stack twice. So it turns into like 40% attack and 40% stellar conduct, which is pretty good. That's really good for the on-fielder. Outside of C6, he kind of gets mogged by characters like Chi-Chi. So I would say probably save your resources from building him until he's C6. Yeah, of course, the Arlecchino banner is the same thing. I guess there is something to be said about Sucrose and Arlecchino with the new Hex teams and stuff. The only thing I really have to say is as long as you have a Sucrose at all, then that's all you need, right? Any more copies of Sucrose are pretty unnecessary in Arlecchino teams, because in these Arlecchino teams, you aren't using the Sucrose burst, which means you don't care about Elemental Infusion at C6, the damage bonus buff. Doesn't matter. So all you care about is just having a copy of Sucrose and making sure she has as much EM as possible. C1 is nice though. I will say, I do like C1. All right, now we can talk about the weapon banner. This is actually the first time I'm seeing it and it looks pretty disgusting. But so of course we have Odette's signature, which is good for Odette. Like it's good for her personal damage. The problem is Odette isn't doing that much damage in her teams. I talked about this in my Odette guide. And because of that, the effect that this signature has in terms of your total team DPS increase, it's quite small, right? This isn't really a high value weapon. It also kind of has a pretty niche passive. You get like attack percent if you do off-field skill damage. The rest of it is stellar damage bonus, which no other character can really take advantage of right now. So it's not a very good universal weapon either. It doesn't actually apply to that many characters. I was thinking it could maybe work on the Cryo Traveler, but there's no way it's better than the actual Cryo Traveler signature that we're getting. The Traveler signature is going to be much better than this for the Traveler. Like maybe this will be useful in the future on someone if they release another stellar sword user who uses like skills for the most of their damage, but otherwise pretty niche, doesn't really work as like a universal signature, like a very generalist one. And same kind of goes for Arlecchino Sig. This thing is only really good on Arlecchino. All of the mechanics are Bond of Life mechanics essentially, which synergize perfectly with Arlecchino, but there are no other polearm users in the game that really take advantage of Bond of Life. So you really wouldn't want to be wishing on this banner. Like if you're trying to go for Arlecchino Sig and you get this instead, well, damn, that sucks. And if you're trying to go for this and you get Arlecchino's Sig and you don't have Arlecchino, you're like, damn, that sucks. So it's not an amazing banner, definitely not, at least for the 5 stars. Now we can talk about the 4 stars. First one is Rust. Unless you play like Yoimiya, I think the Rust is pretty bad these days. I remember back in the day people said Rust was good on Child, but that was actually never really that true, because if you were doing Child's optimal combos, you're actually using a lot of charge attacks, and Rust decreases the amount of damage that you do with those charge attacks. So you effectively had to forego using charge attacks and just use normal attacks. Yeah, Rust actually isn't that good on him, but I think it's good on Yoimiya. I can't really think of anyone else that's good on. Like, a normal attacking bow user, it's just not really a thing. They're mostly like charge attackers. So Rust, not an amazing weapon. And now we have Favonius Sword, which is so good on so many people. Usually always want a Favonius on the team somewhere. Favonius weapons have been making a comeback because of Stygian. In Stygian, you start with 0 energy, so making sure you get your energy back as soon as possible, triggering Favonius on like all your characters and funneling all that energy. Like, it's really important in Stygian, and so Favonius Sword is quite a good weapon. I'd say, however, it's probably not that good on Odette because it's a low base attack. Low base attack is bad for Odette because that hinders her personal damage. You're trying to reach a 3000 attack threshold. Having low base attack makes that harder. And it also has a high substat of energy recharge, which is kind of useless on Odette. Not because her burst is like terrible or anything, but in optimal rotations, you're probably not using your burst that much, if at all. Then there's Dragon's Bane. Dragon's Bane is interesting. Honestly, the most I've ever seen Dragon's Bane be used is like on Raiden as a Hyperbloom trigger. That's kind of the only place I really see Dragon's Bane be used. Actually, you know what? I use Dragon's Bane on my Illua. I have enough energy recharge that I just run Dragon's Bane for the extra EM, and it works totally fine. So it's like okay on Arlecchino in Vape teams, but Arlecchino really likes the high base attack weapons, which makes her sig like so good. I don't see Dragon's Bane getting that much use these days. Like I mentioned, good on Iluba, and good on Raiden as a Hyperbloom trigger, but that's kind of it. The Bell, still one of the most useless weapons in the game, but it looks fantastic on Fremine. So if you're going for Fashion Impact on Fremine, go for the Bell. If you're building Tank Dea, then the Bell is okay. But if you're not building Tank Dea or building Fashion Impact Fremine, then the Bell is pretty useless. Last one we have Sackfrag, and now I like Sackfrag. It kind of really only finds a use for me on Sucrose, but it's really good on Sucrose, just a bunch of EM. It kind of acts like a fake C1 if you don't have C1 Sucrose. It resets your skill charge, you can use it again, and it's effectively like having C1. It's going to be somewhat useful on Mizuki if you plan to play Mizuki in Stellar Swirl, just because it has some low base attack, high EM. The fact that it resets your skill doesn't really do that much, but I could maybe see it being good on Llama too, if you didn't get Aetherlight Spindaloot, which was the event weapon when Llama released. If you missed that, but you got Llama, then I guess Sackfrag's a good option for you. I guess you could do some like shenanigans with Hazo, where you could use your skill twice. Overall, this banner is completely terrible. I'll just say it. Like again, if you're trying to get Arlecchino Sig, you hit the Bell a few times, you hit Rust a few times, and then you lose Arlecchino Sig and you get Odette Sig instead, and it's like, well, now you kind of have, you know, just a 5-star sword stat Sig, which is nice, I guess, but the passive is useless on almost everyone in the entire game. And the same goes for Odette Sig. You're going for Odette Sig, you get the Bell a few times, you get the Rust a few times, and then you lose Odette Sig, you get Arlecchino Sig instead, and you don't have Arlecchino, and you're like, well, dang, that is not a good look. I think the character banner here, it looks better, but I feel like it's a little bit deceiving just because, again, Lynette, not amazing. Lynette didn't even get like Stellar Swirl buffs or anything. Sucrose didn't get any Stellar Swirl buffs, but she's just really good in these reaction teams due to how they calculate reactions, and the fact that she gives like 200 plus EM to your entire team is just insane. The thing is, she does that at C0. So if you already have a copy of Sucrose, getting her constellations doesn't really do anything. And Alyosha is kind of the only one here who you really want constellations for. But if you don't have them C6, then you have a pretty reasonable alternative in Reach, which is just like Chi-Chi. So yeah, not amazing banners, I would say. I think this is pretty like deceptive. It looks kind of good with these two characters, but then it's like only need C0, C6 Merchant, and then Lynette is useless. So like if you're a new player and let's say on the Witch selector thing you picked Official instead of Sucrose, and now you want to get yourself a copy of Odette or maybe Arlecchino, and you know, having a Sucrose on here is really nice, you know, because all you really need is one. So if you're wishing on this, you're doing a few 10 pulls, your chances of getting Sucrose are like pretty up there. And you know, if you're trying to get like Odette cons or something, then hopefully you get Alyosha C6 on the way, and that helps your Stellar Conduct teams. So yeah, not the worst banners ever, but definitely not amazing. But yeah, if you made it this far in the video, you are a real one, and I will see you around. Bye bye.